Hey everybody, welcome to One More Round with Josh Norris. If you like what you see today, make sure to follow us, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Appreciate it. Today I'm super excited about our guest, Jerry Schuiteboer. He has become a friend of mine. We met over at Opa Life. Quick bio, Jerry is a father, cop, felon, and entrepreneur. Born and raised in the Valley with a passion for family, entrepreneurship, building, and outdoors. Founder of Opa Life in Tempe and Ciao Grasso. Welcome,
right.
Jerry.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. So how you doing?
Doing good, man. You know, just living the dream.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, had a flat tire this morning.
Had a flat tire this morning to kick it off. Had to drive it over to Ford and drop one of the cars off. And
it's always a fun way to start your day,
right.
Those types of things. But, we were talking at Opa Life a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me some of your stories. I'm like, dude, you got to come on and tell some of these.
Yeah, I could. I definitely think I could write a book. It's been an interesting life, but it's all part of my story, and I wouldn't change a second of it.
Yeah.
Because it's led me where I'm at today. So.
That's it, man. Everything happens for a reason, I believe.
I believe it too.
Yeah, so you've you're a native. Where'd you grow up in the Valley?
Over on the west side, so I went to Ironwood High School, so that's over like 59th and Sweetwater.
We used to play you guys as our football pregame.
Okay.
Every year from Chandler High School. I just remember because I'm like, this is the longest drive on the planet,
Right.
especially back then.
Yeah, I never really came over the East Valley. It was one of those things where, like when growing up or raising my son and moving, still living on the far north end, 'cause I moved way out to North Peoria. And so coming over here to like Field of Dreams and stuff like that, it was, hour and 20 minutes. Whoa, that was a drive. And then you're there all day for a baseball tournament. And
right.
It's like, man, this is the opposite end of the earth.
It is, yeah. And that commitment, especially when you got kids playing sports and stuff, it's an all-day thing.
It's all weekend thing.
Yeah. No, I'm going through that now. It's so much fun though. Like my boys are 12 and 10.
Nice.
One's playing volleyball, one's playing football. My daughter's starting to get active in like dance and stuff. Yeah. But I'm starting to see those weekend days start to dwindle as far as what we used to do.
Right, for sure.
But it's all part of the family.
It is.
Yeah.
Most important part.
Exactly. So I remember you were telling me you were living in Vegas. You helped open the Luxor. Is that right?
Yeah, so we had moved to Vegas when I was 18 years old, right out of high school. And I wasn't looking forward to going to college. It just wasn't for me. So my ex she had a scholarship to UNLV, so I followed her up there and moved to Las Vegas, from here. And how it started at the Luxor was the opening day. They opened the Luxor Hotel, and it was before all the big fancy hotels. It was just, there wasn't really anything like what there is today at that time. Mm-hmm. Walked into Luxor Hotel opening day, and they were just mad packed. And I just walked up to one of the counters and said, "Are you guys hiring?" And they're like, "Can you start today?" Threw me a shirt, and I started. And there's a big union. Every job in Las Vegas, most of it, especially dealing with the culinary stuff, it's all unionized. Mm-hmm. There's a 2-year waiting list. How they bypassed that, I have no clue, but it was meant to be, and I started that day and loved every minute of it. It was crazy.
Awesome. So what was your role there?
Food server.
Food server?
Yeah. And think about like here in the Valley, and this is 1993, minimum wage was like $4.25. Mm-hmm. They started me like $7.50 as a food server plus tips. And really I had like small jobs here in high school, it was like working for Fry's or this or that, and never really thrown into the circus that Las Vegas is. And that was, a test of everything about you as far as dealing with, that many people and that kind of time frame. I mean, Luxor Hotel is a big hotel, and it was just wall-to-wall people, just completely filled.
Flooded? Yeah. I know it well. So that's where I got married.
Okay.
I got married at the Luxor 16 years ago.
How crazy.
And it's funny because everybody's like, "Oh, did Elvis do your wedding?" I'm like, no, it was actually kind of nice. The chapel was nice and all this stuff. But my family was from here, Arizona. Hers is from California. It was kind of a nice meeting point.
Right.
But yeah, Luxor, I like it. The pyramid is just so cool to see when you're flying in. It's just one of those very distinguishing things. What other hotels were back then? I
mean, you had like Circus, you had...
was the Bellagio there yet, or was that after?
No, there was nothing like that. I mean, really the big ones at that time was like Mirage. I'm not even sure if Treasure Island was really open at that time. Really, the big one was Mirage. That was like the fancy place. Mm-hmm. Mirage and Caesars were kind of like the big go-tos. And then that's when everybody, like Circus Enterprises kind of branched off and started opening up some of the other hotels.
And then, so what did you do after the Luxor? Or how long did you work there?
Was there for 3 years, and like just that opening weekend that I worked at the Luxor, it cost $250 million to build a Luxor hotel. And then I remember seeing reports, for like the stocks and stuff like that, that the Luxor hotel had showed a profit of that opening weekend of like $260 million. So they paid for themselves like opening weekend.
Oh my goodness.
And then shortly after that, that's when like the MGM opened up, and then, kind of all hell broke loose as far as them opening up new hotels. But I was there for 3 years.
Okay. Did you get to meet anybody that people would know, like celebrities or anything like that?
I got the opportunity to deliver some food up to some hotel rooms that, the most notable one was Shaq.
Oh, yeah?
At that time. So 1993, 94-ish, Shaq was there with like another basketball player. But one of my friends worked down in, what is it called? The delivery service, like room service.
Right, yeah, room service.
So he worked in room
I was
service.
thinking
He calls
Grubhub.
me. Yeah, no, he calls me and he's like, "Hey, I'm delivering an order to Shaq. Want to come with me?" I was like, "Yes." Yeah. So went downstairs, met him, got this food, go up to the door, and we just knock on the door to deliver the food, and he's in the shower, and you can hear the shower running because he left the door cracked. And knock on the door, and you just hear this overwhelming voice of like this monster of voice. "Who is it?" And you're just like, "Oh." Like you just like in your bones, you're just like, "Oh my God!" Like who?
It's your
And he's just
cheeseburger.
like, "Yeah, just push it in the door." And so that was basically it. I mean, you see other people there. Nobody I can really name, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's always somebody coming through there. It was.
That's awesome. What was
Las
was
Vegas
there?
was a shit show.
What did you learn the most by being at that job?
What I take from it like now is how they had everything organized to a T. Everything was, as far as business wise, I mean, everything had its place. Everything had a system. They have everything down to a T as far as organization, logistics, setup, and just how they functioned as a business. It's rock solid.
Okay.
And there's no gap in there for any errors.
Right.
And they eliminated everything, security, distribution. I mean, everything is just like boom, 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 boom.
Nice.
Just a fine point. They just, they perfected it.
Yeah, no, the casino world, they're great. There was a book called The Gambler that I just read not too long ago. It's about a guy named Kurt Kerkorian. So Kurt Kerkorian, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he actually owned a lot of the casinos down there or was a big investor in them. In the way he talks about the building the corporations, the systems, getting the staffing, bringing in, your entire C-level suite of how that part of the business worked was pretty fascinating. But
right.
Yeah, I think to your point, like everything is perfect.
Yeah. And
it has to be. I mean, you're dealing with, how many people would you guess come in on any given weekend to a hotel or casino like that?
That I really don't have a clue on, but I can tell you from my experience is like, if when I walked in the morning and say I was working the morning shift, so I got there 5 a.m. When I got there, you walk in the doors, you go down, you get your bank. I mean, everything's set up. It's already preset. You just walk down, pick up your money bag. You go upstairs, and then you basically have a line of 500 people. Because this was, like I said, this was one of the premier hotels back in that day.
Yeah.
And so when you walked out and you walk up on the floor, everybody's waiting. And you'd have a line of 500 people wanting, coffee and pastries to start their morning off or whatever they wanted, so it's just like you walk in and you might be calm for a second and you're in Hell's Kitchen right there, boom. It's just nonstop all day long. You're exhausted, fatigued beyond belief for an 8-hour shift.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you left there, and I know at some point you became a cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that something you always wanted to be?
Never.
Ever?
Never thought I'd be a police officer. And it was one of those things where at the time we wanted to move back to the Valley and start a family. So I got married very young at 20, moved back to the Valley, and I needed a job to support it. And so I just started applying and applied with Phoenix PD. I actually started when I was still up in Las Vegas before I left. And coming from making $100,000 a year, or more in Las Vegas with the tips and everything was crazy. And you come down here to a $12, and I'll never forget it was $12.90. That's what Phoenix PD paid you in the academy at that time. So this is '96.
It's insane. So when you're a cop, that's how they made $12.90 an
In
hour?
the academy.
In the academy.
When I graduated, it was $14.40. Yeah.
And this is in, what year was this?
96.
Wow. Like even by today's standards, even if it were to double, I mean, that's just not a lot of money for the risk.
No, you made your money basically by doing, overtime or side jobs. And so I've never made as an adult under six figures. So, I mean, that took a lot of effort making that kind of, pay range. So it was just 80, 100-hour weeks every week.
Yeah.
Side jobs, standing, directing traffic and all that other stuff that officers do to try to make ends meet.
Yeah. So you didn't want to be a cop. You became one to support your family.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can all admire that. I've done night stalking jobs and served breakfast back to back for 14 hours when I had a gap about 13 years ago before I got my job at Gannett. And but you do what you got to do.
Right.
But what was it like being a cop? Like, what was that experience like?
So starting off, I mean, it was just a whirlwind because at the time I was hired, I was 20 turning 21, going in the academy. It was just so much stuff thrown at you, because you have to be try to be the, jack of all trades as an officer. So they throw, the academy is just a whirlwind of knowledge and trying to learn, different, laws and, techniques as far as, that law enforcement officers use. But it was, I mean, it was a huge learning curve for me because I went from a stressful, time and at the hotel situation to coming to an even more stressful, position with the police department. Mm-hmm. It wasn't always a dream of mine to be an officer. It was just one of those things where I got to do this to make a living. But I fell in love with it. I mean, it's one of those things where you're going out every day and doing just every call is different. So it broke up a lot of the monotony of like a traditional job.
Yeah. Well, any close calls or any crazy stories?
Every day was there were stories like that every day. Yeah. So every call was different. You're going from, a bank robbery to a shoplifting, to a domestic violence to, a simple, auto theft. So, the days were just, it breaks it up and makes it go by so fast. Mm-hmm. It was just, you show up and you're running out and then you're coming right back in and it's like the day's over. But you've gone through so much stuff and you're so mentally fatigued from it that, it was a crazy time. Yeah,
I kind of have an idea of what you mean. So I was in police science when I was a senior in high school at Chandler High. And Officer McElveen would offer people to come out on ride-alongs. So he'd take 2 to 3 students with him on a ride-along. And ours started with the domestic violence. And then there was somebody who had stolen something at a Circle K. And we had to stay inside, of course, for the domestic violence. Then we go to downtown Chandler. This is, by the way, back when downtown Chandler was the hood, because it was not always a nice place like it is today. And we get down there towards one of the Circle K's, it's near Pecos, and we see this streetwalker, and not a good-looking one, by the way. And then this Hispanic fella walking this way, and they meet, and then they start walking together. And so they end up going, behind the alley. And I don't think legally he probably should have done this, but he's like, oh, let's go, behind in the alley and we'll catch him. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I'm stupid. I'm 18 years old, 17 actually at that time. So we go down there, and sure enough, they're doing some bad things. He shines the light. We didn't see anything, but shines the light, and we could tell this guy couldn't speak English. Says, what are y'all doing here? Says, this is not something you can be doing. Obviously we know what was happening. And she pops up and says, hey, you're a man, aren't you? It was a cross-dresser, and he understood the man part because this humility and horror just came over this gentleman's face, right. And I'll never forget that. So I can imagine that's my one experience. Yours had to be thousands of that.
Right, there were. Every day was something different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you, as far as I know, you've been an entrepreneur. That's kind of every bit I know about you. So how did you get out of going to be a police officer to owning your own businesses, and where was that start?
I've always had that entrepreneur, mindset, and always wanted to, jump out and do something for myself. But because of family obligations, which for me always comes first, I was never really able to focus on that. So it was always just, make a paycheck, make sure you support the family and do that kind of thing. So I basically got myself into a situation. I was 18 years on the force. Made a bad decision. To cut a long story short, I submitted a fake receipt to my insurance company on an auto theft deal, and it was so I could get paid for stereo. That's what in my mindset at that time was just about trying to support the family. I didn't have any bad habits, but I did it. So I made a fake receipt, submitted it to my insurance company. Only two people knew about it, me and a friend who was not a cop. That person ended up letting PD know that I had submitted a fake receipt, and everything tumbled from there. So I basically walked in and pled guilty to a felony for forgery for making a fake receipt, and that led to my ultimate resignation from PD. So.
Wow, and what happened?
So I never actually got to wear handcuffs, so that was a good part of it. But I basically walked myself in, pled guilty, and then I walked myself into jail. It was one of those situations where if, say, anybody else had done it, it would have been, it would have ended up being on like probation and turned into a misdemeanor. It was because I knew better, and I did. They kind of threw the book at me, and there was no breaks, no nothing. So I had to do 3 months in jail, and that was my low, right? Like and this was something that happened outside of police work, so it was a personal deal. I was always proud of what I did with the police department, and I feel like I had a good reputation, there as far as with the county attorney's office or the city of Phoenix prosecutor's office and the police department. So for me to do that and make that decision was just, it was a horrible mistake.
Yeah.
But it led me down that path of having to go to jail, and I had a lot of time to think. I wasn't allowed in general population because I was a police officer, so I sat in a little 8x8 cell, for 23 hours a day for 3 months. You get a lot of time to think about what's important and what's not. And
wow. So what do you do in the cell? Like, are you able to get books and that kind of stuff?
yeah, you can order. You order. Yeah, basically books shipped to you. And so I have a great family. My parents, my mom. She was she was sending me like 20 books a week. So I just basically read my ass off and just bided my time to get out.
Yeah.
Kind of planning for my future, what I was going to do.
Wow. So what came about of that in your time in there? Like what?
So I got to the point where I got out. Obviously, I'm not an officer anymore. Now I'm a convicted felon, and I have to decide how am I going to support my family. At this point, I had a very nice home on the side of a mountain. I had bills to pay. And when I left the police department, I cashed out my retirement, cashed out my 401k, and so I'm sitting on a little bit of money, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do for work. And I'm thinking, now I'm a convicted felon. Nobody's going to hire me. At this point, this is 2014. I'm thinking, who's going to hire me with that on my record? So it pushed me and drove me to get into my own business. And that's how I ended up starting Opa. I'm searching, I'm looking for something to do, and I'm basically like, how am I going to support my family? And that led me to, investing into a restaurant, which, going back over of all the things I could have done was the hardest decision and worst decision I probably made. One of the best decisions I made, though, in my life. But jumping into opening a restaurant, it's the most difficult business. And if you ask anybody who's ever opened a restaurant or run a restaurant or been in that industry, it's just really difficult.
Yeah.
Especially starting off from scratch and opening up. And
what are the toughest parts about
it? One, if you're starting, a new brand like I was at that time with Opa, It's just getting your name out, logistically, like food. And the biggest thing is employees. It was one of the best and hardest things as far as that goes, is finding the right people, retaining them, and putting out a good product.
Yeah, no, I think people are the hardest for sure.
Yeah.
I actually had a friend of mine, Laura, so she runs an HR consulting company. So all she does is really help people manage their people.
Yep.
And, it's always the most difficult because it's a moving target. Emotions are going to run high and low for some, and you got to manage it. You got to be staffed and all that stuff. And I've gotten to know a lot of the crew a lot of them used to work for you prior to you selling it. And they're just great people. So you obviously had that down. What does it look like when you start a restaurant? What are your hours like? Do you get to take vacations or anything like that?
So opening that restaurant, it was open to close every day for 3 years. There was no time off. And at that time, we opened at 6 a.m. and we closed at 11 p.m. So it was open to close 3 years straight just to get it off the ground. And we had significant increase in revenue from the first year, because we opened in, let's say, July. So that year was probably, $200,000, and then you grow it to the next year, you're at 500, and then 700, and then, if you finally break that mark of $1 million, that's when, because the profit margins in restaurants it's lower than most businesses. If you get in the 20s, you're doing a good job. Mm-hmm. So, and it took 3 years to get that off the ground before I could actually take a break and actually enjoy some of my time.
Awesome. So, and you sold it right before the pandemic.
I didn't sell it. I ended up getting into, in 2017, started a divorce. Mm-hmm. And so that was another huge, difficult time in my life as far as dealing with that. That was kind of start to the end as far as my ownership in Opa, because when you start a divorce and you're a business owner and, it wasn't planned, it was just something that all of a sudden you get served and mm-hmm. everything starts rolling downhill from there. So then you start getting audited and, all these stuff, by your, on your own business. It just, it turned into me going into more debt to pay off so I could keep ownership of that business. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to keep my house, I wanted to keep the business. So I ended up rolling into a bunch of debt with that I needed to get out of. So I ended up giving up Opa. And then fortunately, somebody I knew was able to take it over.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And then, at some point you got into the MedSpa business, is that right?
I did. So that was in 2019. So middle of the divorce, I needed to generate another form of revenue because the restaurant was taking up so much of my time and everything was under such scrutiny during the divorce. Income was basically all going to pay for attorneys and accountants and all that kind of stuff that goes on during a divorce. So I started Ciao, and I was basically talking to a physician who was talking about, cool sculpting style, devices and that whole avenue. And he had a great idea, and he pitched me on it, and I went into business with him and opened up Ciao.
Cool.
And yeah, Ciao's been fantastic. We're in our fourth, fifth, going on fifth year, and it was a good move, and it's something that I've never done advertising for. Mm-hmm. And right now I haven't been there in 7 months, and it's still running.
Right,
it's doing
still
well.
cranking.
Yeah,
that's it. So, what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur getting into their own business? Starting out. What advice would you give them?
So, like I said, I had always had that mindset of wanting to do something for myself and working for myself, and just like every business I see, I'm like, I want to do that, and I could do this, and this is how I could take that avenue, make it better. But the biggest thing for me was find something that you really love to do, and do it, and give up some of those different sacrifices, whether it be you making so much money, but put that energy of working for somebody else into working for yourself. Mm-hmm. I love right now in my life that I don't have to wake up at a certain time. I don't have to be anywhere at a specific time, It's all about a choice, and having that choice is the biggest thing for me as being an entrepreneur, and being able to still support myself and my family by working for yourself.
Awesome. Well, what's on the horizon for you?
So, because I've had that divorce and that stuff that came about, I've kind of been in a lull for about 3 years. After I started Ciao, I mean, that's been doing fantastic, but I have a lot of other ideas as far as what I want to do, and I've kind of put everything off to finalize that, and it's all kind of been finalized. I'm at a really comfortable spot in my life, and I don't like being comfortable because this is the first time I've ever in my life where I don't have to be anywhere, I don't have to go anywhere, I don't have to do anything if I don't want to. So I'm kind of I was taking a little bit of a break, and it makes me feel lazy. So I do have some other ideas. Right now we're working on a big commissary location in Phoenix, where we're going to do a kind of like a ghost kitchen.
Okay.
But it's also going to be catering. So that's going to be the next thing we're doing. We're already in the process of working on the location lease, website, and all that kind of stuff that goes along with that. But that will be the next big thing, and that's going to be, for me, I think it's going to be actually really huge, because we're taking over a facility that isn't basically utilizing all of the different aspects that they can actually do.
Yeah.
And so we're going to take it and we're going to blow it up.
Awesome, man. Well, it sounds like an exciting venture coming up.
Yeah.
Well, man, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if you like this, if you got any good information, enjoyed the stories, make sure to like, share us, and tell a friend. All right, we'll see you later.